Well, yes, there is a possibility that the global warming that we have been experiencing for decades now can and is likely to result in a deluge, in the rise of the sea level by more than significant amount of height, which would lead to huge territories of our planet flooded, including the major and beloved cities of the absolute importance. In order to be aware or to be convinced about such a possibility, you need to fix your attention on 3 points. It's pretty simple. First, please have a look at the map. This is the map of Central Europe with the major Central European cities on it, in particular the most important cities of Hungary, like Miskolc, Budapest, Székesfehérvár, Győr, Kecskemét, Pécs, Szekszárd. Also the capital of Croatia, Zagreb, the capital of Serbia, Belgrade, the second biggest Serbian city, Novi Sad, the important cities of the Western Romania, like Arad, Oradea, Satu Mare, again Hungarian Debrecen, and two important towns of Ukrainian Transcarpathian region, Uzhgorod and Mukachevo. Please have a look at this map and tell yourselves if you see any pattern in how these cities, these historical important cities, capitals, were founded. Why they were founded exactly in those locations. Well, the honest answer would be no, we have no idea why they were why the cities were founded exactly in those locations, why those locations were chosen. Then now please answer another question. Use your IQ. You don't need too much of it for that, and try to figure out a possible, a reasonable reason to build an ancient city in its location. Again, an honest answer would be, well, no ancient city is possible to be built far from the sea. Or, even more exactly, there is no chance that an ancient city could have been built, or the location for it could have been chosen, other than on a sea coast. So the ancient cities, let alone the ancient capitals, should all have been founded as seaports, given the importance of the sea trade, which had no options. There were no roads, no planes, no warehouses, no anything. So only sea could guarantee a city or a capital its prosperity. Well, but what does it have to do with the map, with our map? Now we do a trick, a magical trick. We raise the sea level by a certain amount of height, by a certain meters. We have instruments to do so. And we see that magically, all those cities that I have mentioned, all the major cities, the most important cities and capitals of Central Europe, suddenly appear strung on a line which is a line of a sea coast, a coast of a sea that, as we see now, clearly existed once in this part of Europe, giving us the reason to found all those cities as seaports on these obviously extinct sea. And of course you should agree that it cannot be any coincidence, that it's clearly a system, it's clearly something that has been revealed for the first time in front of your eyes. We had a sea, and the local cities were founded as seaports on it. Now, what sea level height are we talking about? The sea level was raised by 120 meters here. For Americans, that would be 360 feet. We can do that on a website, floodmap.net, where you can set any sea level, and the whole world map will be recalculated, remapped according to that sea level, with the incredible precision, well, literally by meters, literally 2 meters. Well, so we see that the sea level at certain point was 120 meters higher. The evidence is in front of our eyes, and that's not the only evidence. The same situation is all over the world. We can see now that the Polish-German line of cities, starting with Krakow and then Wrocław, Legnica, Dresden, Leipzig, Dortmund, Bielefeld, Karlsruhe, all of them suddenly show that they are very important cities. They show that they were again founded when being on a coast of a sea, which is not there now. The same story in Italy, where the Adriatic Sea had pretty different configuration, making Milan a seaport, making Asti a seaport, and explaining why we have this string of Italian important cities on a line, on a straight line, like Parma, Bologna, Cesena, Modena, down to San Marino. That was a seacoast. And more importantly, hundreds, if not thousands, of world's toponyms which have some words relating to sea or water as their names. Well, today they are called islands, they are called seaside, they are called fish, or anything like that. But in fact, they have no connection to any sea today, and the local inhabitants, they have no idea why their city or their town or their village bears that name that relates to water, relates to sea, because there is no sea there. But once we raise the sea level by 120 meters, all of them immediately explain their sea names or water-related names. For example, Ostrów Mazowiecki in Poland, island. no island today, but a clear island at the sea level height of 120 meters plus. Остров Великопольский, the same story. Ostrovy, the same story. Isola di Capo Rizzuto near Crotone in Italian Calabria. Local people have no idea why their city or town is called Isola, which is island. But we know, because it was an island. Nobody knows why Marostica, which is Mare Ostica, is called so in Italy, because the sea was there. In Greece we have Peloponnesos. Everybody who knows Greek language, everybody knows that Nessos means island. And everybody knows that Peloponnesus is not an island, it's a peninsula because of the Corinthian isthmus. But once we raise the sea level by 120 meters, the Corinthian isthmus goes underwater and Peloponnesus becomes Nessos, becomes an island. Even more impressive situation in Japan, where we have quite a number of toponyms ending in Sima or Shima, the way you pronounce it, like Hiroshima, Fukushima, Kagoshima, Itoshima, etc. Sima means island. Today, no one can explain why all those toponyms were named like that, were named islands. Only if you raise the sea level by 120 meters, all of them immediately explain their island names, because they turn into islands, or islands appear right next to them. We have quite a number of all those such proofs, collected into a book called Discovery of the Real Troy. All the same information is repeated in our documentary, two-part documentary on YouTube with the same name, Discovery of the Real Troy, in several languages. The information there, the details are overwhelming. You will have no doubt that at a certain point the sea level was 120 meters higher than today. Now we need to date it. We need to understand when it happened, and suddenly it appears that it's a pretty easy task, because again we get back to our sea, extinct sea in the Central Europe, and we open the Argonautica by Apollonius de Rhodes, and we find the mention of this sea in that book. When the Argonauts, steal a lot of things from the in Colchis and try to flee, the Gauls were chasing them. So the Argonauts didn't go to Greece. They entered the Danube River, which was known as Easter back then. Then they pass certain toponyms. Apollonius de Rhodes mentioned them, and they are pretty identifiable even today. And then he tells us that after that the Argonauts entered the Cronian Sea. And for 3,000 years the historians from all over the world tried to identify this sea, to no avail. There is no need in search for it anymore. It's here. This is the Cronian Sea. Also, it's known as Pannonian Sea. Well, the academic world agrees that it existed, but they don't know when. They have no idea that this sea existed only 3,000 years ago. Well, so now it's pretty clear, pretty understandable that the 120 the trip of the Argonauts and the Trojan War happened in the same century, which was approximately 3,200 years ago. So now we know that 3,200 years ago the sea level was 120 meters higher than today. Now we need to make a phone call. We won't, but if you can, please do that, to the Carnegie Institute in America and ask for Ken Caldeira, who wrote an article which can be found on internet, or well, the screenshot of it can be found in our book or in our film, in which he says that if all the ice on the planet melts, the sea level will rise exactly by 120 meters. Also, you need to find the book by the Chilean geologist Roland Stevenson, who in 1977 wrote a book called something like Parime. You can find it as well on internet, and he describes their trip to the Brazilian Boa Vista, and he says that we clearly saw the former sea level line at the height of 120 meters plus compared to today's sea level. Well, proven overwhelmingly and with no room for doubts that 3,200 years ago the sea level was 120 meters higher than today, with all the planet's ice melted. This was the point number one. The point number two will be even easier. We will need to make sure that the warming and cooling phases of our planet's climate alternate, well, change approximately the same every 3,000 years. It can be seen in a table available on Wikipedia. We also copied it for our book and for our film. So this is not a secret. Everybody knows about that. Again, 3,000 years. And finally, please open the history of Herodotus, his second book, where he describes his trip to Egypt and his conversation with the Egyptian priests, who told him that in the previous 12,000 years, previous to Herodotus, the sun rose in the west 4 times. If we assume that those were equal periods of time, that means that during the previous 12,000 years, the sun rose in the west every 3,000 years. So again, 3,000 years. The sun can rise in the west only under one condition: if the planet is put head over heels and continues rotating in the same direction. Only in this case the sun will be rising in the west. Now, no matter how dreadful this information may look, we need to take into account that obviously every 3,000 years the algorithm of the Earth rotation changes somehow, and it leads to such a global warming that all the planet's ice melts and the sea level rises to its maximum possible height of 120 meters, flooding a lot of land. That would be point number 2. And the point number 3 is the situation we've been living today. Clearly, we've been experiencing a very serious global warming, for which the scientists, politicians, whoever, have given us a number of possible reasons, none of them pretty satisfactory, many of them ridiculous, like cows emitting gases, for example. Meanwhile, the reason of this phenomenon, which seems to be clearly of a cyclic nature, which happens once in a while, are the things that it's an inevitable thing and it's beyond our control. We cannot prevent it. We cannot do anything about that. We cannot do anything about Earth suddenly putting itself in such a position where the poles trade places. So the question is, if the current global warming, which is clearly on the rise, we have several days ago the aridest place on earth, the Chilean Atacama Desert, blossomed with plants for the first time ever, which means that the water is there. In Saudi Arabia and in the Arab Emirates, we see that a lot of water for the first time ever. We have never experienced, we have never seen any floods like that, any rains like that in this part of the world, which is something unprecedented. The temperature records are breaking every day, including today here in Ukraine. We have lots of temperature records have been broken. So the global warming is serious. It's on the rise, and we don't know if it's going to happen and if it's going to stop and when it is going to stop. So the question is, if we have any right to assume that this very serious global warming that has unprecedented global warming that has been on the rise cannot be the same global warming that we experienced 3,000 years ago already, or that we've been experiencing every 3,000 years. With the sea level, with all the ice melted, and with the sea level risen by 120 meters. Do we have a right to assume that it's not gonna be like that? I don't think we do. I'm sure that by default we need to assume that that's exactly the scenario that is awaited for us, and we need to be prepared for that. Because now the conclusion: if the sea level rises by 120 meters, for example, the whole country of Denmark completely goes underwater. Sadly, huge part of my Ukraine, including here in Dnipro, where I am now, right here the depth of the sea would be 40 meters. It floods everything here. It's going to flood everything here. Our beloved and wonderful and important cities like my favorite Buenos Aires, like Barcelona, like New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Miami, and the whole Florida, Tokyo, London, Paris, they all go underwater in this case, in this scenario. And we don't know how fast it can happen. It can be a matter of the next 100 years, if the sea level rise is going to happen gradually. We don't know that. It can happen overnight. Maybe not overnight. It can happen over a weekend. It can happen in the span of 1 month. That would be a catastrophic thing. We won't be able to do anything if it's going to rise that quickly. So the point is, if we are ready to accept this, all this information, if we are going to take it into consideration, or if we are going to do anything about that, if it's going to happen, which it is, then we cannot save the cities, but we definitely can save people, we can save animals, we can save museums, we can save anything of value, we can save infrastructure, and most importantly, we will need to be able to move the nuclear stations as rapidly as possible, because one nuclear station flooded. We remember the Fukushima case, we remember the Chernobyl case. That's the end of the mankind. That's the end of the planet virtually. Well, it's one nuclear station. Imagine 10 nuclear stations going underwater, and they have been building now 110 nuclear stations, including in the places where they will go underwater. But we know about the safety line. We know where the water will not go, and we can move our existing infrastructure and people across that line. That would be the line of life. If we're ready to do anything about that, if we're ready to take this into consideration, that we already should start doing something. For now, maybe that would be the phase where people need to be explained the whole thing, but pretty soon we will be needing to move behind that line. Actually, we need to get accustomed to living in a paradigm of two sea coast lines. One is the one of today, and the second one, the one that we have once every 3,000 years, which is obviously waiting for us in the near future. We already have a string of ancient ports on that second line. There will be our ports when the water rises, and we will be waiting for the flooded ports, for the flooded cities to spend maybe 200, 300, several hundred years underwater, and then emerge again, and maybe we will be able to use those cities as well. Just remember, the mankind has already survived this phenomenon several times. It's survivable, but we need to know about it, we need to be prepared for it. Thank you.